Have you ever been to India or happened to be at an Indian wedding? Have you ever appreciated beautiful clothes or admired Indian costumes with their rich colors and dazzling jewels? If you have and you enjoy a good Bollywood movie, let Jodha Akbar be the starting point and guide to a peek into ancient Indian fashion, especially Mughal fashion, that is still mirrored today in the love the Indians have for colorful dresses, embroidery, and precious ornaments. But who were these Mughals? The Mughal Empire was located in northern India, around the cities of Delhi, Agra, and Lahore, and included parts of today's Afghanistan. It was known for its religious tolerance and high standard of living. The great star of the Mughal dynasty was Emperor Akbar. He was the first ruler to be born in India, and his aim was to create a new state where his Muslim and Central Asian upbringing could meet the Indian culture. I first encountered him as the love interest and main character of the movie Jodha Akbar, of course. In real life, he was a fashion nerd, like my friend the Qianlong Emperor. Do you remember my video about Qing fashion? Akbar had also understood that fashion could be an important tool to unify and give a sense of belonging to his very diverse subjects. The movie tells the story of Akbar and his first Rajputi wife, Jodha. Being Akbar a Muslim, that marriage was a very bold political move, especially because he let his wife keep her religious belief, giving credit to the religious tolerance Mughals were famous for. It's very romanticized and not always historically correct, but oh my, the costumes. I mean, the settings are breathtaking, so the clothes had to match the beauty of the landscapes and the amazing buildings. Let's start with the basics of Mughal fashion, and let's keep an eye out for the amazing costumes we can admire in this Bollywood blockbuster. Akbar's forefathers, the first Mughal emperors, were descended from the great Turkish conqueror Timur and the great man Genghis Khan himself. They came from Central Asia, where the temperatures are quite cold. Plus, they lived a nomadic life, so much so that even when they've been for a while already in Hindustan, they still like to live in big tents. They were born for camping life. Therefore, their clothes were long, warm, and quite practical, with a strong influence from Persia. You can imagine the clash with the Indian way of dressing, quite different also because of the very hot and humid climate in Hindustan. Akbar's grandfather, when he arrived in Hindustan for the first time, thought the locals dressed in a very outlandish fashion and described the poorer population as going around practically naked. Probably he was partially right. As we know, in ancient India, clothes consisted mostly of a piece of cloth folded in various ways. They are indeed the masters of draping. One of the aspects that the Mughals are famous for is jewelry. As I said in my video about Italian Renaissance before, also for the Mughals, more was more. Probably because of their nomadic origins, jewelry was very popular, also because it was a very easy way to transport wealth. Mughals always had some precious stones on them, because you never knew who you had to bribe next. And India, it's the land of precious gems. So there they were, people covered in precious stones. The movie is a perfect showcase of this passion and of the different jewelry worn by the Mughals and one of their closest new allies, the Rajputi. Men and women alike wore lots and lots of jewels, such as earrings, bracelets, rings and necklaces. They were never too many. For men, turban ornaments were vital, as their headdress was also an indication of rank and status. So of course, nobody wanted to be outshined. If we look at the Emperor Akbar, we see he prefers beautiful brooches or other ornaments, often feather-like, when not using real ones. A trend inherited by Persia, while the Rajas from India had a very different array of crowns and pearl ornaments that distinguished them from their new masters. Aren't these over-jeweled headdresses gorgeous? Also the patka, a sash worn over the typical court dress, was often secured with a belt and jewels. Women were not less passionate about their precious gems. They wore necklaces and bangles, earrings and ankle bands, braid ornaments and a variety of head jewels. A nice touch in the movie Jodha Akbar is the mirror ring Rajkumari Jodha is given at her wedding. This was usually worn by all the Mughals' harem inhabitants. In many historical movies, I've noticed that Muslim and Hindu women are wearing different head ornaments. I wondered if it was a cinematic shortcut to show us who was who, or if it was actually an historical habit. As in many other movies, also in Jodh Akbar, Mughal women are always depicted wearing a passa, a jewel with a chandelier kind of shape. It has many rows of pearls and other gems that are then attached to a crescent-shaped panel. All along the lower margin of the crescent, more pearls and gems. The Rajkumari, the Rajputi princesses, wear instead a chain with a hanging pendant that decorates the hairline, called Mahang Tikka. The version worn by queens of Rajasthan, and of course by Jodha herself, is the Borla. Apparently it's a correct historical detail, and it's an easy way to show who was who. Nowadays, both ornaments are still worn, especially by Indian brides. Even both together. Shocker! What is really amazing and innovative during the Mughal period is what kind of new techniques their jewelers developed. For example, you could add a secret touch to a jewel by enameling the back or inner part of the piece. And then the technique for which Mughals are really known, the so-called kundan, could be used to set gems. The kundan is the gold foil used to fix the precious stone to a very thin and delicate surface. That meant new possibilities to create very fine and elegant pieces. No chunky ornaments here. If you're interested, I will link the V&A page where the process is shown. A thing that always bugs me, but really bugs me, is that everyone seems to go to sleep with a full set of jewellery, Jodh Akbar being no exception. Not only small earrings or rings or a fine necklace, I do that sometimes too, but the head ornament that probably weighs like a huge pebble on your forehead. Did they really go to sleep like that? If anyone knows more, please let me know about it. I cannot sleep myself thinking of that. At the beginning of Akbar's reign, he was surrounded by Mughals, loyal subjects of his father, but in time he worked more and more with his Hindustani subjects, especially Rajputi. This integration we can also clearly see in the dress code he chose for his court. Let's look at Akbar himself, who, during the movie, mostly wears a sort of uniform, who is maybe a tad too early in real history, as at this point, when he was only 19, he would still be very much influenced by what his forefathers were wearing. But that is actually a really good showcase of what Mughal fashion was, beginning exactly from his reign. Akbar introduced the jama, a long tunic with long tight sleeves and a rounded hemline with a full skirt. Could be fuller according to paintings of that time. It is the first truly Hindustani garment at the Mughal court. We can see the very simple but practical idea Akbar had to differentiate the Muslim and Hindus by deciding that the first would tie the robe on the right-hand side, the second on the left-hand side. Was it a good idea? I think so, because it gave the sense of belonging to the same country, maintaining group individuality. Under the jama he wears pajamas, high trousers, and he secured everything with the patka, the jeweled belt. A garment that had been worn by Akbar's forefathers and is still worn today by Islamic clerks or mosque leaders is the kaba, an open coat with short sleeves. And in the movie we see a lot of beautiful examples worn by the emperor and all the Muslims' character. But the central piece of a man's outfit was the turban. You never went out without one, and to surrender it to others was a sign of humiliation. Instead of the big turban with pointed skull cap of his forefathers, he preferred a smaller one, getting closer to what the Indian fashion was. The same he did regarding facial hair. He was the first emperor not to wear a beard and go for a more light moustache, again adopting the Indian style. I think Hrithik Roshan, the actor who plays Akbar, must have been very happy to show his wonderful and strong chin. Last but not least, shoes. They were boat-like shaped, with upturned points coming originally from Persia. They could be of precious fabrics or leather and embellished by embroidery. For more adventurous times outside, boots with a similar shape were of course worn. In the movie, the Rajputi are all sporting a very similar style to the Mughals, including a jama with pajamas and a rather small turban. The main detail that differentiates them, apart from the opposing lacing of the robe, is that we never see them wearing a kaba, but they all go around with beautiful and quite decadent shawls. As already said, in the show they represent what nowadays we recognize as Mughal fashion, But at the time when the story is set, the Mughals would be actually still very much influenced by their Central Asian culture, and it would be only in time, at the height of Akbar's reign, that the two ways of dressing would merge that much. The same goes for the ladies. At the beginning, they were all of Central Asian origins, and they wore very similar dresses to their men. But it's true that the Rajputi wives of Akbar, yes, there was more than one, would bring with them new trends. In the movie, the costumes for the Mughals ladies are the usual jama, fitted at the waist with round skirt, the pajamas, the tight trousers, and the chadar, the shawl used to cover their heads. The Rajputi style we nowadays immediately recognize as Indian. They wore a choli, a cropped bodice with short and quite tight sleeves, with ghagra, a wide ankle-length skirt, and a orni, a headscarf with decorative tassels and pompons. And of course jewels. Have I mentioned jewels? Both fashions use colorful and contrasting fabrics, cottons and wools, and more often very delicate muslins and silks, richly embroidered. In the movie we can see beautiful examples of how different the dresses looked and how you could spot straight away which were the ladies of Jodha's retinue and which of the Mughal court. With time the difference became less and less, and the two styles mixed quite as well as the two ethnic groups. And it all starts with Akbar's reign. I find the Mughal fashion so beautiful and interesting, and that's why I wanted to share it with you. So many jewels and rich colors and materials. It's so vibrant and whimsical. But what I like the most is that it sprang up from two very different cultures that mixed together thanks to far-sighted political leaders. The movie Jodha Akbar is clearly a parade of the best of Mughal and Hindu fashion of the time. Probably not the most accurate, but let's be honest, who wouldn't, at least for a day, not like to go around dancing and running dressed like Jodha or Akbar? I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please click link and subscribe to my channel. Thank you very much for watching. Ciao ciao!